When should you refinance your house? Now, there's a lot of speculation out there about what's going to happen in the future and whether the cost of capital here or there is worth it, and this video will not be about any of those projections or conjecture on the future. This video is a complete guide to cut through the noise and help you understand how to calculate when the juice is worth the squeeze and exactly when you should refinance your house in 2024 or 2025. If you don't know me, my name is Keegan Wetzel. I am a former military officer. I left the military and started a career in software sales where in about 2.5 years, I was able to build a real estate portfolio valued north of $15 million that allowed me to quit my W-2 job and focus on what I love full-time, which is representing buyers and sellers as a real estate agent with an investment-minded focus and helping them with mortgage products along the way. We operate our business in Southern California on the real estate side and in 46 states on the mortgage side. I also love road cycling, but unfortunately crashed recently, and my hands are a pretty gruesome sight, so try not to pay too much attention to those in this video. They'll be healed up by the next one, I hope. And if we haven't connected yet, follow me on Instagram. My handle will be in the description below, and you can always book a call with me if you have specific questions. My website link will be in the description below as well. I'm happy to answer any questions investing related in California or not, and obviously mortgage-wise, we operate in all 50 states in the United States, and so we can certainly help you with any questions there. All right, so let's jump into it. Today, we're gonna talk about 4 specific topics. 1, understanding interest rates and how and why they move. 2, refinancing your house. What does that look like? What are the costs? When is the right time? How do I know if I'm being swindled by somebody or if this is actually a good decision for me and my family, whether it's a primary home or an investment property? 3rd, if you pull out that cash, what's the highest and best use for that capital? What's the effective cost of capital if you can access some write-offs? And what value add do you get if you were to use that capital in another location? And lastly, why taking action is always the right move right now, even if that action is to hold and wait. Let's jump into it. So let's talk about what's been happening. To say we've experienced a period of economic uncertainty over the last 18 to 24 months is an understatement. And again, this is not going to be a video talking about the Fed and overseas policy from the United States, but we do have to acknowledge that there are external influences that are going to affect what happens to the value of your house and the cost of the money which you're borrowing to own that home if you are, or the ability for you to collateralize that asset and pull out money against it, whether you have a loan or you own that asset free and clear. We've had tons of economic uncertainty here in the United States. We're in the middle of a presidential election season as of the recording time of this video in September of 2024. And after the quickest period of economic tightening that we've seen in United States history, the Fed has, for the first time in 2 years, cut interest rates. So we recently had a 50 basis point cut, and they've signaled 200 basis points that they're going to drop the Federal Reserve rate. Why does all of that matter? Well, we borrow money for lots of things, to buy cars, to buy houses, our credit cards, business lines of credit. And when inflation gets out of control, the Fed's going to raise rates, make it harder to borrow money to curb that inflation, effectively to decrease the growth of some of those industries so that the cost of goods sold doesn't continue to skyrocket into something that gets out of control very quickly. And subjectively, you probably experience some of this inflation, whether it's in your gas bill or your grocery bill or your travel budget over the last couple of years. So we've reached a period where the Fed is happy with where inflation is at. Now let's talk about what the Fed actually does. The Fed does not set mortgage interest rates. The Fed sets the overnight Fed funds rate, which is the rate at which banks borrow money from one another. That's a topic for another video, but that rate directly correlates to treasury bonds, different yields of different debt products, and most importantly, and what we hear about mostly in the news, especially on late night television, is mortgage rates. And if you bought a house in the last 2 years, you know that we can't ignore it. It happened. The Fed raised rates and it hurt. Mortgage interest rates are expensive, and we're looking forward to getting a cheaper cost of capital to bring down those monthly expenses for the assets we own that currently have debt on them. Now, my professional opinion is markets love certainty. In a period where we don't know who the next president is going to be, or we don't know if war is going to break out, rates are going to be a bit higher than if we feel like we have a certain and fairly projectable glide slope for the future. Additionally, my professional opinion is in a market where the predominant school of thought is that we're going to have decreasing rates. And this is that market, finally, and long awaited. The Fed has told us they intend to cut interest rates by 200 basis points by the end of 2025. And in a downward pressure economic environment where interest rates are likely to go down, predominant school of thought is to take the cheaper capital that you can for whatever asset you have at every given interval. And I'll dive into that a little bit further here. But before I do, there's a couple of upcoming meetings that are important to keep on your calendar. And here's a few dates to save if you want to pause this and write them down or record them in your Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, depending upon if you're an iPhone or Android user. There are 2 additional Fed meetings this year, November 6th and December 11th. At each of those meetings, the Fed will decide whether they hold rates where they're at, they cut rates, or they increase rates. And they've given guidance already at their last meeting that they intend to cut rates again by at least 25 basis points. Additionally, there are monthly inflation reports. These come in 2 forms, the CPI or Consumer Price Index number and the PCE or Personal Consumption Expenditures number. Just so that you can have this written down, the CPI is released on the 12th of every month and the PCE is released on the 30th of every month. Those numbers, when they come out, can change the Fed's guidance for their next meeting if they are significantly off base for what we're expecting. And lastly, employment data. The jobs reports are published on the first Friday of every month. And if you've paid attention to jobs reports, you know there's a big snafu. Not too many months ago, where the numbers that were being reported were not accurate, not even close. And so all of these little pieces of data affect what the Fed does at their next meeting. No individual piece is going to greatly change the forecast, but each individual piece of data can together cumulatively affect what happens in the future. That's to say whether we cut rates sooner or we wait longer. Okay, let's jump into calculating the cost of that refinance and understanding if it's worth it for you. So we need to dive into what are the actual costs associated with refinancing a mortgage. Those costs are going to be soft costs and hard costs. Hard costs are paid for individual reports that are required, say like an appraisal report or title insurance. Soft costs would be for services like an escrow fee or a loan origination fee. And so let's take an example where you have $3,000 in escrow and title insurance and other costs and $1,000 in loan origination fees. Your total cost to refinance that mortgage then would be $4,000. When you're refinancing debt, you're anticipating that you'd pay a lower interest rate. It wouldn't make any sense to refinance into a higher interest rate that costs you more on the money you're borrowing. So let's take that same example where it cost you $4,000 to refinance your house. Say your monthly payment drops from $2,000 per month to $1,800. We'll make that the total payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance instead of maybe just principal and interest. So you save $200 per month on your mortgage payment, but it cost you $4,000 to complete that refinance. Again, the $4,000 is escrow fees, title fees, all the fees associated with closing, appraisal, loan origination included, and the savings, the total savings on that refinance of maybe refinancing 3/4 of a point or a full percentage point lower is $200 per month. So the final thing you do is divide one number by the other. Stick with me, this is way easier than 5th or 6th grade algebra. If it costs you $4,000 to refinance per month, and you are saving $200 per month, you divide $4,000 by $200, and it will take you that many months to recapture the cost of your refinance, or 20 months. But there are additional benefits that are not captured in the simple cost. That simple cost is the baseline. The additional benefits would be the opportunity to maybe skip a mortgage payment where you don't have to make a mortgage payment for a month and you get to pocket that money. And for certain loan products, you also can get your prepaid taxes and insurance from your previous loan sent back to you, and you can increase the balance of your new loan by those prepaid taxes and insurance that are sitting in your escrow account. And I'll walk through an example. But before I do so, this is the pivotal piece of any recapture calculation to know, is it worth it to refinance my house? If you intend to be in that new loan for at least 20 months from our previous example, then it absolutely makes sense to refinance that house. And you're going to have additional savings that I'll dive into in a second. But if you do not intend to be in that loan for 20 months, then it probably does not make sense to refinance your house. So we also need to take into account the additional savings and the cash you can get back from your previous escrow account to understand, is the cost of capital worth it? And can we drive down that recapture period from say 20 months to something far less, like 10 months or 8 months or 6 months? Let's dive into an example. Okay, stick with me through the numbers here because this is pretty freaking cool. And it's specifically, if you have an FHA or a VA loan, the opportunities for refinances come more and more frequently because the cost of doing those loans on a refinance is far smaller, and you have more lateral ability to roll some of those fees into your loan, which increases your loan balance that you're paying interest on, but the ability to get, say, $10,000 on hand now and the opportunity cost of that $10,000 on hand now, as opposed to increasing your loan balance by $10,000, in my opinion and across my portfolio, has always been worth it. I have 16 units here in San Diego and a handful of syndications across the country and a handful of short-term rentals across the country. and I take refinances at almost every opportunity that I can using this exact calculation. So I recently helped a borrower who had a 6.5% VA loan on $1 million house in Southern California refinance down to a 5.624%. This was a VA streamline refinance, also called an IRRL, an interest rate reduction refinance loan. So it didn't require any income, any appraisal, any credit. It was really, really lean on the cost for the borrower. These IRRLs do include a 0.5% VA funding fee, and the borrower did have to bring new taxes and insurance to the loan because they elected to get their old taxes and insurance from their impound account sent to them via a check in the mail. So the total cost for this new loan was 0.5% of $1 million or $5,000 for the VA funding fee, $650 in loan administration costs, and $2,500 for title and escrow. So a total of $8,150 to complete that refinance. For this streamlined refinance, we were actually able to do it for them completely for free by getting them that exact amount of lender credits from one of our investors. So their cost to do the loan was $8,150, and we were able to get them that entire cost in lender credits, $8,150. So their cost out of pocket was $0 to complete this loan. The borrower then elected to, as I previously said, roll their prepaid insurance and taxes into their new loan balance, thus increasing their new loan balance by $7,000. But they also have just about $7,000 in their existing impound account with their existing lender. Now that loan's going to be paid off, and when it is, that $7,000 check will be sent to the borrower. So they're out of pocket $0, and they're getting a check for $7,000 for their unused prepaid taxes and insurance from the previous lender by increasing their loan balance on their new loan by that same $7,000. And that calculation can make sense for a lot of people. $7,000 financed over 30 years will be a lot more than $7,000 in cost. But the opportunity to have that $7,000 on hand right now and put it into a CD at 5% or treasury bills at 4.1% can far outweigh the cost of capital of leaving that in the 30-year loan. So thus far, this borrower is out of pocket $0 because the lender credits have covered the entire cost of refinance. They also received a $7,000 check in the mail from their previous impound account, which is their money. It was just prepaid, and they did so by increasing their loan balance. They then saved $613 per month in their monthly mortgage, which is over $7,300 per year in savings. And lastly, the borrower got to skip a mortgage payment, which isn't really skipped if you know how mortgage principal and mortgage interest days calculation works. Effectively, they were able to skip a $7,100 payment for August and about half of September's payments, or over $10,000 of monthly mortgage payments that they would have made that they did not have to when one loan was being paid off and the other loan was being put in place on the property. There's a more detailed explanation on how this calculation actually works. I'm happy to share it with you on the calculating prepaid interest days, but for the purpose of this example, that was an additional savings of $10,100 in payments they otherwise would have made on their mortgage that they're no longer making. So in conclusion, they got a check in the mail for $7,000 from their previous impound account. They're also going to save over $7,300 in annual costs, and their actual expenses saved out of pocket for the months of August and September that they would have spent on their mortgage payment were $10,100. This resulted in a total benefit to the borrower of $23,456 in year one. And so you can see that the recapture cost here isn't just savings versus cost. If you can drive the cost to zero and inflate your loan balance to get a little bit of money back and skip mortgage payments, the recapture cost here is effectively negative month. They've saved over $23,000 and there was no expense associated with that, unless you want to accredit some expense to increasing their total mortgage on the property. So I share this because it's a case study of how a well-executed refinance has a very simple recapture cost, and then when you add in the ability to skip mortgage payments and you add in the ability to get impounds back from a previous loan, you can actually have a 0 or negative month recapture period, which means at every interval where you can refinance, you should. This is largely conducted by and made possible by lender credits to cover any costs, which in a downward interest rate environment are going to be available if you don't take, say, the bare bottom interest rate and you take an interest rate that's a little bit above that, but you can take that interest rate 2 or 3 or 4 times as you refinance as rates go lower, as well as skipping a couple of payments and choosing to increase the mortgage balance to get your impounds back. Okay, so let's move on to our third point, which is cost of capital. Does it make sense? So we calculated the recapture cost and we know how long you'd have to be in a loan to make it make sense. Now we should look at, well, if you do pull that money out, what are you going to do with it, right? Let's say you've increased the mortgage balance by a little bit by rolling some of your fees in or rolling some of your taxes and insurance in, depending upon your specific mortgage product. What are you going to do with that money? Well, an annual savings of $23,000 is awesome, but if you can refinance twice in a year, say every 6 months, and you could double that number or make that 1.5 times, you're looking at a substantial amount of capital for most American families. So let's say there's $20,000 to $30,000 on the table that you could get in your pocket. At today's rates of a high yield savings account paying 5.25%, T-bills paying 4.2%, muni bonds paying 5%, there's a lot of different ways you can continue to grow that capital and potentially grow it tax-free in other avenues. You can also use that capital to continue to drive equity in your house. If you have a kitchen that needs to be upgraded or a bathroom that needs to be upgraded, or if you live in an area where building accessory dwelling units on your property is feasible and cost effective, that $23,000 or let's call it $30,000 could be worth 2x if you put it into a kitchen. It could be worth 4x if you put it into developing an additional unit. It could be worth whatever time is worth to you if it's used for a family vacation and supporting that kid through college. So doing the effective cost of capital on that is an objective and a subjective calculation that is best done on an individual basis. But I think the important thing to think about is having this money on hand, can it make me more money or give me more time? Both of those things give me more peace of mind to put my time into the things that actually support my values. And across building my portfolio, the answer to that question was almost always a remarkable and outstanding yes. And our fourth point, taking action. Why now is always the time to take action. Don't let the numbers scare you. There's a lot of numbers in this video, but it is 5th and 6th grade algebra. And if you don't know how to do it, it's only because you haven't done it in a while, not because you're not capable of doing it. If you need help running these numbers, reach out to me and my team. You can DM me on Instagram. Again, my handle's below. You can reach out to me and book a time to meet via my website link, which is also below. I think running these numbers at successive scenarios, say a 0.5 point drop, a 1 point drop, and a 1.5 point drop, so that you're prepared for what's coming in the next 12 to 18 months is important so that you can proactively look forward and say, I know exactly what I'm gonna do at this time and exactly how much money I can get out of my house or save on my monthly bills and where that money is gonna go, as opposed to being reactive when you get 50 postcards in the mail or the late night television's talking about this big mortgage rate cut and you're scrambling because you think you're going to miss out on something. I would much, much prefer any of my clients to know when it's worth it for them specifically to do a refinance and what the calculations look like at multiple intervals when we're in this decreasing interest rate environment. The predominant school of thought, again, in a decreasing interest rate environment is to take the refinance at every opportunity possible because you're always lowering your cost of capital for your house, especially if that recapture period is very short and especially if it's 0 months. It may feel counterintuitive because spending money on the refinance at each interval feels like a real cost, and I would highly suggest pursuing your lender or having a conversation with us to see if you can get lender credits to offset that so that your cost is actually 0 for your hard and soft cost to do the loan. And I would recommend not being married to the loan products that you have. We have experienced 18 to 24 really tough months. The Instagram memes of, parents being able to put food on the table when rates were 7% and remember when are already popular. And they're only going to continue to grow in popularity as we remember or look back and realize maybe how tough things were. You have assets in your life, and it's not your responsibility to pay what the loan was when you got that asset. Your best scenario for you and your family is to calculate what your lowest cost of interest is so that you can save the most amount of money and you can use that money in whatever avenue is most advantageous to you and your family, unless you just like paying interest and you need the write-offs, in which case you can continue to do that as well, but I don't think it's going to be a popular school of thought. And lastly, if you've made it this far, I so appreciate it. Please subscribe, like this, share this with someone who owns a home. And if you'd like to find out what the value of your house is and how much equity you may have to pull out, reach out. We've got a trusted network of agents in all 50 states. Our mortgage company services borrowers in all 50 states, and we're happy to run through mortgage numbers with you as well. If you're looking for real estate services in Southern California, I can help you personally. And if you're just an investing nerd, I am very soon starting an online community for free detailing my entire portfolio, all the investments I've built, and I'd love to have you there. So again, DM me on Instagram or reach out at our website below and book a time to call. Until next time, I'll see you there.